Our next speaker is Andrew Bridgen, the Member of Parliament for North West Leicestershire. In the 2010 general election, Andrew turned a Labour majority of 4,477 votes into a Conservative majority of 7,511 votes. And has since then increased his majority to over 13,000 votes, with a 25% lead over Labour. It really makes you wonder how out of touch the leadership of the Conservative Party is. We've got people like Andrew, we've got people like Anne-Marie. They're racking up huge majorities. They know what appeals to Conservative voters. You would have thought David Cameron or Theresa May would lift up the phone and ring one of them and plead with them to be the party chairman. Instead, we have leaders that are obsessed with the metropolitan elite and political correctness. And there are no votes there. Andrew has also campaigned to restore the integrity of the House of Commons and remove Speaker Bercow from office. Ladies and gentlemen, could you please welcome a great campaigner and a great parliamentarian, Andrew Bridgen MP.
Thank you very much, Chairman, for that introduction. It seems traditional now to start with a joke. There aren't many jokes flying around Parliament at the moment. It's fair to say that the feeling of the public, the electorate towards Parliament has never been lower. In fact, that was confirmed by the Hansard representatives in an interview I did for Politics Live yesterday. But what I'll start with is actually a true story. We're going to have a leadership election soon. Theresa May cannot go on forever. She's already gone on far too long and done far too much damage to our country, our democracy, and the Conservative Party already. It's going to be a very crowded field. There are many leadership contenders out there, many people positioning for places in the new cabinet when the dust settles. And my story is a true story. It was recounted by someone who was there. And one of these candidates, who will remain nameless, was in the green room at New Broadcasting House 2 weeks ago. And he said to the journalist who was going to be on the programme with him, well, we're going into makeup now. That's the bit I really hate, you know. I really hate that. And she was sitting next to him in makeup, and the makeup artist came to see my colleague, looked at him and said, actually, you don't need much, you've got plenty on already. And they wonder why people don't believe politicians anymore. It is going to be a packed race for the next leader of the Conservative Party. I think one of those reasons is that the current incumbent has done such an appallingly bad job that I believe even the tea lady at number 10 fancies her chances of doing a better job. Ladies and gentlemen, I was elected to represent a constituency I took from the Socialists, my home, in 2010. And I remember the feeling in 2010, as the newly elected MP for North West Leicestershire, how proud I felt walking in to the House of Commons, the building opposite the Mother of all Parliaments. I had the honour to be selected to leave the campaign to leave in the East Midlands. I campaigned against the MP for Rushcliffe, a great campaigner, and someone who, as a child, I'd looked up to, Ken Clarke, father of the house. I debated with him, I attended the TV interviews with him, we went on the radio against each other, we did everything, we did all the campaigning in the East Midlands, the hustings, and the East Midlands voted by 59 to 41 to leave. My own seat of North West Leicestershire voted by 61 to 39, and although I'd been returned twice as the MP and I was sitting on 11,200 majority after 2015, I told my electorate that this was the big question of our lifetime, of my political career, however long that went on. And I made it clear to my people in North West Leicestershire, if they didn't back me in the referendum, I couldn't carry on being their MP, because on the big question, the future of our country, our nation and our democracy, we didn't agree with each other. And that would have left my position completely untenable. But they did. They voted 61 to 39 to leave the European Union. And when I analysed the results for the East Midlands, and Ken Clarke stands up there as the father of the house, called by the Speaker in preference, as is his position as the most experienced MP, he stands up there as if he has that legitimacy in the East Midlands, when the fact is that realistically the only constituency that voted to remain in the whole of the East Midlands was Ken Clarke's seat himself in Rushcliffe. And the majority for remain in that seat was less than the majority for leave in my seat next door. Now, if you look at the figures, in the centre of Leicester, the 3 Labour seats in the centre of Leicester, Leicester City, nominally they voted to remain by 1,500 votes across a 250,000 electorate. But I'm pretty sure that that the member for Leicester East, Keith Vaz, has got quite a few dodgy postal ballots, so I'll discount that result immediately. So I was tremendously proud when, as a nation, we chose, despite the fact that that was not a fair referendum, the deck was completely stacked against leave. Every major political party, and I remember saying to David Cameron that I'd objected to him drafting 2 more of the most experienced civil servants onto the Remain campaign during the Purdah period, that it was unconstitutional. And I was told by number 10, 200. He said, we've got every single civil servant in the country working for Remain, I can assure you. So it wasn't a fair referendum, it was a stacked deck. The Remain campaign outspent Leave by £2 for every one. And yet we won. And again, I was so proud of my country, my part in that, my colleagues, but mostly my constituents who backed me, backed leaving the European Union, backed democracy. And I walked back into Parliament again, bursting with pride. What I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, is the shenanigans that have been going on over the last 12 months in that Parliament have made me ashamed to be part of it, and part of what will be seen as a huge betrayal of our country and of our democracy. Yeah. The reason I chose to campaign and vote to leave was actually really quite simple. It wasn't about immigration or any of that. I had a very simple definition for anywhere on the doorsteps in North West Leicestershire. I just say, look, I want to be in a situation where the people of North West Leicestershire and every other constituency can vote for a member of Parliament who actually makes and votes on all of their laws, who can be held accountable to the people who put me in Parliament, and if they don't like the laws that I'm passing in their name, then they vote me out and bring in someone else. It's not very complicated. And what we've actually got now is a huge betrayal of that democracy. And it isn't even about Brexit now. It is about the democracy of our country. I think one of the problems is the elite. They didn't want the referendum. They thought they were going to win the referendum. They've never accepted the result of the referendum, and it doesn't matter what the people say. The elite are still there. And it's been very disappointing. I know through my contacts in various APPGs, quite a few foreign ambassadors who have no axe to grind in this argument, and they have been telling me for 2 years that the super elite, the super rich, the international businesses that they speak to on a regular basis have been telling them for the last 2 years that they were never, ever going to let Brexit happen. And I think what else I've seen, which is really disappointing, I think is after 46 years in the European Union, the people at the very top of our political class and our civil servants, they've lost their courage, they've lost their self-confidence. It's all hollowed out by 46 years of being in the European Union. It's hard to believe, ladies and gentlemen, that 100 years ago we ran a quarter of the globe from Westminster. I think the analogy I've used on that one is it's like we used to have a 5-star Michelin-starred restaurant as our government. We used to create these fantastic dishes from scratch. And over the years, this has been corrupted and we've been de-skilled. And now we accept our laws pre-packed from Brussels, ready to go in the microwave. We've become a chicken-ding parliament with a chicken-ding politicians, quite honestly. Theresa May. I think I tweeted yesterday, I don't know if it actually went, I think it may have been kiboshed by my staff, who I put all my tweets out through my staff as a sort of filter. I don't think this one got through the filter, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. I said that it would appear that the Maybot has gone haywire and no one can find the off switch. And the Prime Minister, she could still save her reputation, save her position in history, the pride of our country, and the Conservative Party if she were willing to take us out of the European Union on Friday with no deal. But that is not going to happen, because if she had the guts to do that and the belief to do that, we wouldn't be in the negotiating position we are today. It is fair to say these have not been negotiations. It has been a complete and unmitigated capitulation. Yesterday, the 1922 committee went to go and tell the Prime Minister at number 10 that she had lost the confidence of the parliamentary party. And apparently she just sat there in stony silence with no response whatsoever and let them go. It's unbelievable. I spent the weekend on the doorsteps in northwest Leicestershire. I spent 4 hours canvassing on Saturday and I did 7 hours on Sunday. I was with my eldest son, who's standing in a Labour ward in Colville, one of the few Labour wards left in my constituency, and we only managed to do 300 houses because more than half the people were in. And the response on the doorstep, there is no appetite for Jeremy Corbyn. They are absolutely aghast that we're entering into negotiation with someone who for 4 years we've said is not fit to anywhere near the levers of power. And the Prime Minister herself invites him in to number 10. And the problem is, ladies and gentlemen, the threat to our democracy. It's taking me 5 and 6 minutes on the doorstep to persuade one of our supporters who's voted leave in the referendum why there would be any future, any optimism in taking part in any elections, let alone district council elections, which have badly turned out anyway, at any time in the future. And I don't have 10 minutes to spend on every doorstep of my 44,000 households in northwest Leicestershire. Most of the responses are that they can't understand how we've got to this position. But when I show them the arithmetic, there's 160 MPs in our parliament that voted to leave the European Union, and there's 484 who voted to remain. And no matter how many times they tell us that they accept the referendum result, we know the way they vote in the House of Commons that they do not accept the result. There's never been such a big wedge, such a big gap between our parliament and our people. And whether it's just the Westminster bubble or the London bubble, I don't know. But the gap in our country between London, the Westminster elite, and the country is getting wider. It is not getting narrower. I've voted 3 times against the withdrawal agreement. It is not a withdrawal agreement. It is quite Orwellian that anyone would ever call it a withdrawal agreement. It is a staying in agreement. It's an agreement where the Prime Minister promised in our manifesto that we'd dual track the withdrawal agreement with our future partnership negotiations. What we've actually done is given the European Union everything they want, including £39 billion at least of taxpayers' money, your money. The government doesn't have any money, it's all your money, to get to a position where we might be able to one day talk about what we want, but in a position where whoever the next Prime Minister is will be completely hamstrung, because the EU have already got everything they want. We'll do 2 years in transition where we're, for the first time in our history, a large proportion of our laws will be made by a foreign power over which we have absolutely no influence. And if you think that that won't be extended to 4 years, because while we're in the transition period, we're fully paying into the European Union, so of course that will be extended to 4 years. And the European Union, you can already hear them saying, well, you want a super Canada deal, don't you? Well, it took 7 years to negotiate that with Canada. They won't want to start negotiating even if we signed up to the agreement for the first 12 months, because they'll be reorganising after their European elections. So you're looking at 8 years, 9 years. We'll be in the backstop. And as Mark quite rightly pointed out, David Lidington let the cat out of the bag and confirmed what we already knew, that the Prime Minister had been misleading us for a long time when she told us we could get a free trade agreement, because the only way they're going to let us out the backstop is through a customs union, and even that will be subject to 27 vetoes, where Spain will want Gibraltar, the French will want our fish, Republic of Ireland will probably want Northern Ireland, and everything else. Why, oh why, would any politician want to put his name to a treaty which could run till 2099, which forces our country into vassalage? Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't matter how many times the Prime Minister or anybody else brings back that withdrawal agreement, I promise you, I will never, ever sign our country up to that. On the way in here, a couple of delegates from the Beaconsfield constituency spoke to me. I spoke there about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I think it was interesting. It was quite just about. I spoke. They got a very good reception in Beaconsfield, Conservatives. It was about a week after I spoke that they put a vote of no confidence in their member. Actually, that's why. Let us forget that I believe in Brexit. I'm a Brexiteer. I believe in the sovereignty of the UK. Let's just look at where we are in the pure politics of all of this. We've got 52-48, the referendum was won by. No one's really changed their mind. In fact, quite a lot of reasonable Remainers in my seat have said to me, the way the European Union have treated us over the last 2.5 years, it is clear that we now have to leave. Other people, because to return to the European Union or remain in would be like returning to an abusive relationship. They would never ever believe us when we said, well, we're not happy about this. Well, you didn't leave when you had the chance, did you? And others who believe in democracy said, yes, well, I voted to remain, but, leave won. So we must implement that decision, because on another vote, I might win, in which case then I would expect you to implement that decision. So no one's really changed their mind. In the 48% now, we've got the Labour Party, who've become more Europhile, pushing for a second referendum with Keir Starmer's help. You've got the Liberal Democrats, second referendum. You've got the SNP and Plaid Cymru, who basically want to revoke Article 50, no Brexit. You've got Change UK, want a second referendum, or whatever the name is this week. I don't know. So what we've actually got is, for a Eurosceptic Conservative Party delivering Brexit, we've got 52%. And we're not far away from a general election. The situation over in the House of Commons, with our majority, working majority, down to 3, with the support of the DUP, I think it's almost impossible that we're going to get out of the next 6 months without being forced to have a general election. So where do we want to position? Just purely on the political mathematics, where should we be positioning the Conservative Party, we need to go for that 52%, because nature abhors a vacuum, ladies and gentlemen. We either occupy that ground as the Conservative Party, or it will be occupied by somebody else. And whether that's Nigel Farage and his Brexit party, UKIP resurgent, that's the situation we're going to find ourselves in. I had a fascinating, interesting email sent to me by a constituent the other day, which I think I'd like to share with you, which sort of summed up the situation. And it simply said that, is it Stockholm Syndrome? Is it Stockholm Syndrome? It said, we're on the turkey farm, and for the first time in 46 years, the gate is open, but it appears that the turkeys want to get a withdrawal agreement with the farmer before they leave. What is going on? So I was asked by some of your delegates on the way in here that we wanted some hope. Well, I'll give you my vision of where I think the hope lies. We need to remove Theresa May as soon as possible. She's already done enough damage. She needs to be replaced by someone who believes in Brexit and wants to deliver Brexit. And what we need, I think, if we have a Brexiteer in charge of the Conservative Party, given the fractious nature of our politics and internal party wrangling at the moment, I'm afraid I think we'll probably lose some colleagues from the parliamentary party. That means we will lose our majority, and we are heading for a general election. We will never get Brexit through that parliament with those MPs. We are going to have to go back to the people. It's not going to be, it will be a people's vote, but it's going to be a general election. And what we need is genuine Eurosceptic Conservative candidates who believe in Brexit and will vote it through, when I believe we'll be resoundingly returned into government to deliver on our democracy, saving our country, saving our democracy, and saving the Conservative Party. And if you want a vision of hope, it is that the spirit of the British people, the political elite, the civil servant, they may be cowed by 46 years of subservience to our EU masters, and the Prime Minister's out there now begging for an extension when she should be telling them, we're leaving on Friday, unless you want to come to me with something better, we're leaving on Friday with no deal and you don't get any money. My vision of hope is what it always is the people we represent, the people of Great Britain, and their indefatigable courage, which we see demonstrated again and again. The fact is, there's 3.5 million EU migrants who, despite the fact that we're leaving the European Union, wish to maintain their home in our country. That is a huge boost of confidence to us. And I only wish, and I hope in the future, we'll have MPs, 650 MPs elected in that House to share their confidence and the indefatigable spirit of the British people in our future post-Brexit. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that tremendous, heartfelt oration. It really caught the mood, I think, of all of us here today. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is Anne-Marie Morris, the Member of Parliament for Newton Abbot. Before entering Parliament, Anne-Marie worked as a corporate lawyer and then marketing director of PricewaterhouseCoopers. Anne-Marie was first elected to Parliament in 2010, when she gained the seat of Newton Abbot from the incumbent Lib Dem with a majority of 523 votes. In the 2017 general election, Anne-Marie increased her majority to 17,160 votes. In 2013, Anne-Marie was one of 30 Conservative MPs who voted against military action in Syria. please welcome Anne-Marie Morris.
Well, it's lovely to see everybody here today, and thank you very much, Chairman, for the very kind invitation. Compared to you or other speakers, I probably have less of a history in politics and less of a history in Europe, but I caught up very fast. Actually, it was a member of the group here, and I can see him, who actually gave me my education. I remember on a daily basis a diet of what was wrong with Europe. And that was quite a change from my mother, who he's also converted, who used to have a picture of Edward Heath on the kitchen wall. I know. So I've come a long way, and I'm very pleased to have arrived where I am today. I'm also pleased to be representing the South West, because they are often, dare I say, the forgotten part of England. Everybody thinks that somehow the West Country stops at Exeter. And there are quite a number of us of a Eurosceptic position, but I think I'm probably the only one in this group fighting absolutely to ensure this deal never, ever goes through. So having listened to everything that Mark has said, and having listened to everything that Andrew has said, you're very well aware of what we want to achieve, and it's not just the three of us. You're very well aware of what the challenges and what the problems are. But I guess what we are less aware of is how are we going to win this battle? Because it be in no mistake, this is a battle. It's a battle royal. We have been fighting it, dare I say, for decades. And where we are now, dare I say, is the latest but most important skirmish. But I would say to you, ladies and gentlemen, is that if we are going to win, and I'm absolutely determined that with you and with my colleagues in Westminster, we will win, we will need your patience, your belief, and your support. And I can see a lady shaking her head about the patience bit. What I would say to you is that the strategy of those who would have us back in Europe is that we should be slowly ground down, that our energy will seep away, that we will stop campaigning, and that ultimately we will vote for that terrible, terrible deal. Absolutely. I see a lady in the audience saying, no, no, no. But the message is, it is going to take us a while. And it is a job which must be done, not just by those of us in Parliament, but by you out on the ground. And you play a very, very important part. I'm currently working with 28 separate groups, all of whom are looking from different perspectives at how we can deliver on that referendum and how we can exit the European Union. But you are part of that too. So let me just perhaps give a bit of shape to this jigsaw puzzle. And it is a complicated jigsaw puzzle. We have the challenge of the leader. We have the challenge of our fellow Conservatives and the Cabinet. We have the challenge of Europe. We have the challenge of the Labour Party. And let's not forget Mr. Speaker and the civil servants. And it is all of those that we have to play in a very complex game of chess. I would love to say we could get rid of Theresa May, preferably yesterday, but I don't think that is going to happen anytime soon. And while I'm very dismayed that her reaction to the 1922 results, which effectively confirmed she does not have the confidence of her own party, I'm not surprised by that reaction. And while I would love to urge the Cabinet to, for goodness sake, use their weight and frankly resign en masse, I think the reality is this Prime Minister, what would she do? She would stay, and she would find another very willing number of MPs who would like to take their career in a direction of ministerial success. So why I say patience is, on the leader front, the time when we absolutely can get rid of her is December. And that seems for me and to you a long way away. But I say to you, keep the faith, keep the patience, because we need you to. We need you to. That lady must go. But it won't be until December that there is a formal mechanism by which, having had those letters, which you've already got, we can actually then require her to stand down. And at that point, we will then be in a position to move forwards with a new election for a new leader. So I would say to you, patience is necessary, but the end is in sight. Secondly, our parliamentary colleagues. I am astonished at the level of ignorance among my colleagues. And the more that any of you can do to educate them, so much the better. And even talking to the Remainers, they have absolutely no understanding of this withdrawal agreement, and they have absolutely no understanding why we should not like it. Now, Mark and Andrew have told you exactly why, and you already knew why we should not like it, but the more you can spread the word in your associations and through your friends and networks, the better we will be. Because at the end of the day, they are politicians, they want to be elected next time round, and if it becomes abundantly clear that the next leader is likely to be a Brexiteer, and frankly, God help us, it must be, then if they want a good career, and if they want to be elected, then they need to understand this issue, and they need to start thinking about exactly what this deal leads to. Then we have Europe. Oh, before I leave the colleagues, I would say that slowly but surely they are moving across, and there are many who, having voted for the Prime Minister's deal on the third round, will never vote for it again. So slowly people are moving across, but not fast enough and not enough of them. So Europe, those stubborn individuals. And while clearly France and Germany are saying this is absolutely ridiculous, and rightly so, at the end of the day, we have seen on so many times how ultimately Europe has said, have an extension. And my belief is that while for all Mark and Andrew say about the dire things that we can do and let loose in the European Parliament, I think they are as stubborn as Mrs. May. And I think they will keep extending. So I believe the only way out is frankly probably going to be with a new Prime Minister, and we will go out on world trade terms if we by then do not have a Parliament who will take us out with a proper trade deal. Because I believe if we have a proper Brexit-orientated leader, they will not be afraid, should Parliament wish to stand in their way, to effectively trigger the clause in Section 1 of the European Withdrawal Act and lay the motion which simply says, we are leaving. So, at the end of the day, Europe is not an insurmountable problem. They will be a pain, and we have to be patient, and they will continue to extend. As for the Labour Party, well, the idea that we could do a deal with them, as you can imagine, has actually helped the cause getting fellow MPs, Conservative MPs, to join us. Because the idea of supporting a deal which is effectively a deal pushed through by Labour is just unacceptable. Just unacceptable. And you know, I agree actually with what Andrew said, and Mark, I don't think Labour, even given Corbyn, are daft enough to give Theresa her deal and get it across the line. But right now, I don't think they're going to agree. I think they're going to carry on saying nice things, but at the end of the day, I think they are probably the least of our concerns. And what about Mr. Speaker and those civil servants? I know. Well, Mr. Speaker is in a world of his own, but even he has a time limit. And Mr. Speaker, yes, but not in the short term, Mr. Speaker will go. But I think the other thing that I would say is that for all his shenanigans, there are limits in what he can do. And for a proper piece of primary legislation to go through Parliament, you have to have a money resolution if it involves spending money, and the third reading has to have the Queen's consent if it's not part of the original manifesto and part of the Queen's speech. So there are some things even he can't thwart. And I think for us then, we have to learn to play him at his own game. We already know that there is a constitutional challenge that has been brought with regard to the letter which Theresa, if you remember, signed, effectively agreeing that initial extension without any reference back to Parliament. And there are many other constitutional breaches. All of that helps, I think, in terms of continuing to put the pressure not just on the Prime Minister, but on the current sitting members of Parliament. And don't forget, if those who want to make sure Brexit never happens can use these quirks, so can we. We just have to be a bit smarter about it. So, where does that take us then? What is the road forward? I believe that there will be an extension. I do believe that the European Union will give us probably a year. But remember, the terminology is likely to be, unless you, quotes unquote, sort it out and leave sooner. Theresa, we know, has laid an extension to take us to the 30th of June. I'd love to think we could defeat that, but that would be wishful thinking. So I think we are in this extension game for some time to come. But I do agree with Andrew. I do not think that that wretched deal, that withdrawal agreement, will ever get through in this Parliament. However, we must keep fighting. We must keep getting more and more MPs on side with us. In terms of Labour, yes, they could, clearly. And frankly, the logic is they should bring a vote of no confidence if this goes on. But Mr. Corbyn doesn't want to, because the truth is, actually, Mr. Corbyn, he is a Leaver, but that's not something many people know. And secondly, he doesn't really want an election. So we have a problem. So while he could, I don't think he's going to. So I think they're a bit of a side issue here. So I think, for me, what is going to happen is that we are going to have to be very, very patient. We will come out, and there is nothing in that wretched Cooper Letwin bill which takes WTO and no deal off the table, however many times they try to persuade you in Parliament that it does. So we're in for a long haul. There will be some extensions. There will be, I believe, no support ultimately for this wretched deal. I don't believe Labour are going to ultimately cause this a huge problem. I do believe leaving on no deal terms, on WTO terms, is absolutely doable. And I do believe that we will continue endeavouring to fight on all of these corners within Parliament, and I do believe that each of you has the will to do that too. So let us have faith. Let us continue the fight. Let us absolutely ensure that every day between now and at least when we get a new Prime Minister, we are talking to our friends, talking to our groups, getting the message out that leaving with no deal is not a tragedy. Leaving with no deal is the greatest opportunity for which we are best prepared and will give us that economic opportunity. It will give us the opportunity on those golden fields in the future that will ensure that we as a country grow and thrive and take us out of this European political union which is going further and further into recession. We can do it. We will have a positive future, but together we have to fight it, and together we have to believe in it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much indeed, Anne-Marie. That was a tremendous speech and we all appreciated it greatly. Anne-Marie has actually got time for a few questions. Any members of the press left here that have got a question they'd like to put?
Would you vote against the government in a vote of no confidence if Labour brought it? And would you campaign for the Tory party in the European elections?
Okay, two things. First of all, am I ever going to support a vote of no confidence in the government? If that is brought by Jeremy, then no. And the reason I say that is, frankly, we do not need until we're ready that general election, although I do agree with Mark and with Andrew that I think we will get a general election this year. So, if the Prime Minister tries to bring, and I don't actually think now she will, for a fourth time her deal, and say that is linked to a vote of no confidence, for me, my country comes first, and my party, which needs desperately rebuilding, comes second. But I do not believe she can bring them as the same motion, because the majority for passing is different. The majority for this deal is a simple majority. If she wants to vote of no confidence, she needs a 2/3 majority. So I don't think that that will happen. But the answer to your question is, my country is my priority, because at the end of the day, we're only going to get one final shot at getting this right, and that, to me, is my duty to deliver. Prime Ministers come and Prime Ministers go, and we have good ones and we have bad ones. And I hope to goodness we can bring the Conservative Party back together again, but right now, the country must come first. Now, you did ask the second question.
European elections.
European elections. To be honest, I think that the European elections are going to be a bit of a non-event, if I can put it like that. There is very little time to prepare for them. A number of individuals who were MEPs have said they won't stand again because it is completely countercultural, if you like, to everything we said about withdrawal. So no, I'm not going to be campaigning. Frankly, I don't think there are many people who are going to be campaigning. But at the end of the day, there are plenty of people out there who will want to stand. And they have my very best wishes, and I'm sure those that get elected will be those that do support Brexit. So watch this space. Okay.
You said that you will not be campaigning in the European elections, but who will you be voting for? Would you consider voting for Nigel Farage's Brexit party?
I would need to see who the candidates were, but certainly I would prefer somebody on the Brexit side rather than the Remain side. In my area, they're currently on the Remain side. So yes, I would like to vote for somebody of a Brexit orientation, and I sincerely hope that we will put forward somebody with that orientation. So let me see who the runners and riders are, and then I can tell you.
Bravo.
I'm from the Australian media. You say...
Welcome.
Thank you very much. You say you don't think Jeremy Corbyn wants an election. Everything I've heard from inside the Labor Party is that they're raring to go. They believe that the sooner there's a general election, the turnout for the Tories will be low, the blue vote will be split about 3 different ways, and Jeremy Corbyn will have survived his own Labor Party. What gives you the confidence that Labor don't want an election?
Okay, because all of the Labour MPs who I speak to a man, do not want an election. They have got so many issues in their party, which is fragmented many more times than ours. I mean, the anti-Semitism piece is but one. I'm not surprised you're getting the message, because after all, that is the message. How can any party say, I don't want an election? But the reality is, I believe, everything that I've heard, that he doesn't want it, the other MPs don't want it, and as to the concern as to whether he would win it, clearly, right now, where we are, it would be very difficult. And I believe that what would happen is there would be a hung parliament. And it could go either way. It'll be hung one way or the other. So for Conservatives, the much better position to be in is to have a Brexit leader who can take us forwards and deliver Brexit. Once we have that, then I think there is absolutely every chance for the Conservatives to win back. Because I think we have to remember the Conservatives are about a lot more than Brexit.
How do you get a Brexiteer on the final two for Prime Minister?
Okay, the way the system works is that, first of all, a number of names will come forward, and they will be a mix of Brexiteer and Remain. And slowly they get whittled down to two. Now, if you are going to make sure that one of those is a Remainer, what you have to do is work together as a group of Brexiteers to identify one individual who you believe, whether it's on their own or with a ticket of 2 or 3 going forward with them ultimately in what will be the future cabinet, and you get everybody to support that name, that individual, that team. The reality is that going forwards, there are many, many Remainers who, while they are Remainers, recognise that if they are to remain in a Conservative Party which is in government, then they have to have a Brexiteer Prime Minister. So I think if we can come together, those of us who feel strongly, I think we will get the support, surprise, surprise, from the Remainers, because they care about the future of the party as well.
We're brought up to believe that we live in democracy, but the reality is we're controlled by the establishment. The establishment in the Conservative Party controls who we're able to vote for. The BBC, with its 4.6 billion of licence fees, controls what we listen to. So we end up with a parliament with 70% of the MPs in favour of remaining, and a country and 70% of constituencies that want out. How do we break the control of the establishment over this country, apart from cancelling our direct debits to the BBC?
Well, I think you've already started that process in Beaconsfield, haven't you? And the reality is, the power is with the people. And however much central office might try to impose Remainers, institutionalised individuals, the constituents are speaking out. And we know that 70% of the constituents want Brexit and want Brexiteers. Never underestimate the power of local people to defeat this desire for, if you like, the autocrats, the elite, those that seem to spend their lives surrounded by what London and politics seems to give them. Locally, we have huge power, and that power is now, frankly, beginning to make its way. And I'm absolutely sure that all of those members in Beaconsfield will come together and support a new individual to represent them who will be non-establishment and a Brexiteer. The power is in your hands.
Okay, I'll take a question from a gentleman I know comes from Beaconsfield on that.
John Strafford. Going back to the first question, on the question of the leadership election, every single leadership election, the MPs have manipulated it. They have asked what's in it for me. They have asked what position I will get to the candidates. The whole thing has been a total farce. And the executive of the 1922 committee, together with the party board, can change the rules of the leadership election. So I would put to you that they should change the rules so that 4 candidates go forward to the membership, and it's then done on a preferential vote, and the one that gets over 50% becomes the leader, and in that way you can almost guarantee it'll be a Brexiteer.
Well, I can see a fan of Johnny Mercer there. Johnny Mercer, as you know, has already suggested that, and it is a good idea. And I will certainly reinforce that, because the more democratic this process is and the more representation from the party in terms of that decision, I think the better.
Thank you.
What are you going to do about central office? Because in the last election, a number of people, including myself, told them of constituencies that could be won, told them that 130 Labour constituencies voted Brexit. I think we were ignored, and you need good Brexit candidates, local people, in every one of those constituencies. Would you care to comment?
It's a very fair point, and in a sense, central office and the civil servants have some similarities, don't they? I think with regard to central office, there is a very hard lesson that they are learning. They have never seen the party in a mess like this. So I think, in a way, that what you want is going to happen, because there's absolutely no way we can run the next general election with a new leader in that way. In terms of the messages, I can absolutely leave you assured of the fact that myself and my colleagues are making the points to them that you make. And I think at one level, you will find that central office is as frustrated as you are, because last time around, it was a very small cabal that decided which seats were going to be targeted. And if you remember, many were frustrated within central office. Many MPs were frustrated because seats that we feared losing weren't concentrated on, and we lost them. And as MPs, we were deeply frustrated because it wasn't about the Conservative Party, it was about Theresa May. The lesson has been hard learnt, but I believe it has been learnt.
Where are the heroes strong enough to break us free from the shackles of a tyrannical and ruthless European Union?
Thank you, sir.
We can remove those shackles. We have the will, there is the way, there are enough of us, but we must keep fighting, and we have to use every single tool in our armoury. So you are important, as I am. You have to convince the people. Those people have to convince the members of Parliament. Those of us in Parliament who are already persuaded need to persuade the others. We also need to continue to have our voice heard and vote as we are doing. We must not give in. We must not give up. We will carry on the fight, whatever comes next.
Yeah, yeah. Madam.
Two points really. Do you think the Fixed Term Parliament Act is now not serving democracy? And the second point I have is I've written to our local Conservative Party chairman, who is not interested in challenging our Conservative MP who has voted for the withdrawal agreement and thought Chequers was wonderful. So where do you go if the Conservative Party chairman is not on your side?
Okay. Well, that's absolutely right. As to the first question, yes, I mean, the fixed term parliament, I think, has had its day, and should go. I mean, the reality is we haven't really used it in any sensible way in the last few elections. I've had 3 elections, and I was only first in 2010. So the Fixed Term Parliament Act simply doesn't work. At some point, it will get fixed, but in the grand scheme of what are the most important things to fight, that's kind of not it. But I agree with you, it's redundant. And I think actually the answer is in the room. In terms of your chairman, there are some chairmen who are just so frightened of a general election more than anything else that they just want to keep the boat solid, the boat firm. So you will find right now, whether we like it or we don't, there are some Conservative chairmen who feel like that. But the reality, as I think was shouted loudly from the back, was that it is in your hands. If you are a member, and if you can get more members to join up, then over time you will be in a position to vote in a chairman, because they only have I think they can stand for three times up to 3 years. So that they will be removed. And it's about you ensuring that locally your voice is heard by getting more of you signing up to the party. So while I hear stories of members tearing up their membership cards, it's not actually very helpful. We need you there, because if you're not there, we're not going to get the right result, either locally or nationally, in terms of the next Prime Minister.
One of the things which I've mentioned before with Anne-Marie, an elephant in the room, and there's a very favourable one at the moment, and that is the 1969 Vienna Convention of the United Nations. Article 46 of that says that if there is any conflict with an internal law of a state, that state can resile from the treaty straight away. So a reference to the United Nations, the EC would have to wait for that resolution, and that might be a very clear marker point. Thank you. Could I have your comments?
Thank you very much.
Your comment is well made, and those with a more constitutional law frame of mind than my own are indeed looking at that very point. There are, as you know, already ongoing constitutional law proceedings, but at the end of the day, that will take time. Right now, time is not on our side, and we need to continue the fight to make sure this wretched deal goes no further and to ensure we get the right Conservative leader. So you're right, but as with litigation, it's very expensive, it takes a lot of time, and it takes forever to get a result. So absolutely, we should do it, but it's about time.
Thank you so much. Yes, gentleman just there. Yes, you, sir.
Thank you very much for your very passionate speech. It was wonderful. Can we know who is your preferred candidate for the next?
Well, for me, I've already been quite public about this. It needs to be a Brexiteer. It certainly can't be anybody who's in this current cabinet, because I'm afraid they don't have guts. It needs, I think, to be somebody who is new, fresh, determined and balanced, who will help us, if you like, not only deliver Brexit, but bring, if you like, peace once again to the Conservative Party. And so for me, that's Dominic Raab. I believe we need somebody who can really start again. And while I'm sure there will be many in this room who would prefer Boris, Boris is a great cheerleader. Maybe the best ticket is the pair of them. But he's a bit like Marmite, you love him or hate him. Where I feel if Dominic could just play it in the right way over time, then he would ultimately be a better bet. But let's see.
Anne-Marie, thank you very much for your very clear exposition. You talk about patience, and I suspect in this room we're all very impatient. But I wonder if you could just clarify for me. You mentioned really the issue in terms of timing of a leadership contest in December, which is the first technical point, and and you also mentioned a general election. So I'm a bit unclear in terms of the timescales for a leadership contest, which would go back to the party, and a general election, because a general election might come in with a shorter timescale.
You are absolutely right to make the points that you do. My crystal ball has been telling me all sorts of things, but clearly what I would like it to tell me is that the general election came after we have a new leader in place. So that then means, are we going to have to try to keep the ship afloat, if you like, and fighting until January, February? Yeah, because that's the last. We then get past the technical time when we can change our Prime Minister. Or can we do it earlier? Now, as I said earlier, my concern about Theresa is that she is just so water off a duck's back, rhino hide. I can't think what is going to make her stand down. And the challenge is, if she does stand down, we need enough time to put in place a new leader, because to go into an election with her at the helm would be disastrous. Yeah? So you're right. The juxtaposition of those two is mission critical. I would love to be able to somehow force that dreadful woman to stand down, but I can't, as far as I'm aware, there's no mechanism. If she does, fantastic, and then the new leader needs to have enough time to then, and I think they will have to, because they will need a mandate, call a general election. So that assumes that we have some control over all of that timing. So then that brings into play the question that the gentleman from Australia raised, which is, what about Jeremy? So if Jeremy does what I don't think he will do, but nobody is 100% right in this game, as you know, then we do have a real challenge. Because if he calls it before we have a new leader, then we are definitely in a very disadvantageous position. That said, that doesn't mean whatever happens, one, we're not going to stop fighting, and two, he's going to have it all his own way. Because realistically, if we get an election before we have a new leader, then it's going to be a hung parliament, as I said before. And frankly, if it's Labour, if it's Conservative, the Labour lot are not going to be able to bring in all the draconian things that everybody is terrified about, because they're never going to get enough votes behind them to get it through. So, yes, they can do damage, but because it'll be a hung parliament, there's kind of a limit. So I can't give it clarity, because too much depends upon moving parts, and whether Jeremy is the one that effectively brings the general election to play, or whether it is a new leader. And all of that very much depends upon the pressure that's brought to bear on Mrs May, and whether or not we can persuade her somehow to go before she has to go at the end of the year.
Clwyd West, for my memory, is a Conservative association, is having a special general meeting and doing a vote of no confidence in the current leader of the Conservative Party. Do you think that's something that should be encouraged by other constituencies as well?
I think the answer is, if they are minded to, they should, because that clearly adds more and more pressure. I would have thought that the national body that represents all the associations would be the one who ought to be giving advice and guidance on that. But bear in mind, there is a conflict here, because some will feel that, if you like, just try and keep the lid on everything until such time as we get a new leader or general election. So I think it would probably be quite hard for that body to say, everybody have a vote of that nature. That said, there are a number of constituencies who, as we see, have demonstrated their frustration with their own MPs and with, as you suggested, our leader. And there should be nothing to stop that happening. And I suspect those in the room who have heard you may well take that suggestion back to their constituencies.
Thank you very much for the speech, and there were great speeches today. The withdrawal agreement is, we all understand here, the most despicable and awful piece of legislation ever coming before Parliament. Not only the 39 billion, which is absolutely astronomical, but also it locks us in forever. But I think it's worse than that. What it actually does is make such a pig's ear of Brexit that they hope that after 2 or 3 years, everybody will be begging to go back into Europe. My question is, well, the alternative to that is some kind of delay by which we can eventually get rid of the esteemed leader that we have at the moment. And my question is, why is it that so many of your colleagues who were for a long time loyal actually turned and voted in favour of this awful piece of legislation at the last minute? It really beggars belief, and I think a lot of us are very astonished that they did so.
Yes, let me explain why I believe they did. Some of them, it's because they believe that after the deal is done, and when we get a new leader, then they can negotiate something which is better. My position is that that's not possible, because with a backstop, bargaining position is all in the European Court, and they're not going to give us anything which is going to be better than what's currently in that so-called draft document. It's going to be worse. So that's the reason, because they believe, and certainly that's where Michael Gove comes from, he believes that you can negotiate after the event. Okay? The second reason why some of them have voted as they have is that they are more concerned about how the Conservative Party is breaking up than about the country. So they put party first, country second. Because what they want is some closure in all of this. And with closure, they feel we can find a way of getting the party together again. Now, you will be well aware from what I've said and others have said, that's frankly not realistic as a way forward. But that, if it explains, is why they've done what they've done.
What was Jacob's excuse?
Jacob believes it can be renegotiated.
Thank you.
We're not France.
Thank you very, very much, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we've had two excellent speakers that have already left, but we've had a tremendous speaker here. And Anne-Marie has shown what great stamina she has, what great common sense she has, and what loyalty she has to that referendum result and what 17.4 million people did. We're truly grateful to Anne-Marie for what she's doing in Parliament. As I said earlier, she is a heroine because she's voted against it on every occasion. Even when that Brady amendment came along, she still voted against it. She knew that wasn't going to work. She is a hero, and we all need to back her and show her our appreciation.